Welcome to Blue Collar Coder, and this week we are going to take a look at SolidJS. It's a new framework that competes directly with React. It's pretty exciting stuff, but if you're like, oh man, just we need another JavaScript framework, I'm going to argue that you're wrong. It's been about 5 years since Svelte, which to my mind was the last major framework, so we're pretty much due for something new. So I want to start off with a viewer comment. I've never seen an expletive framework need so many additional libraries to solve something as basic as state, Jotile, Recoil, Redux, and the list goes on and on. This all points to a serious design flaw in the underlying React technology. And you know what? I agree. So React is being asked to do things that it was never designed to do. And like any good engineers, we always have to be asking ourselves, knowing what we know today, can we be doing it better? And SolidJS is basically a reboot of React that addresses two primary issues. The first is the VDOM and the fact that these components re-render continuously. It's a performance issue, and I'll tell you what, SolidJS is blazingly fast. And the second is state management. SolidJS has all of the reactive state management built into it that we see today in hooks, but done better, as if we started from scratch knowing what we know today. So let's take a look at how we are going to dig into this. So we are going to re-implement this application. This is a simple eCommerce application. It's implemented in React currently, and we're just going to port it over to Solid. So let's take a look at it first. I can go and filter stuff down. I can go and click into it. I can add it to cart. I can add it to cart from the home page. We can see the cart over here, and I can clear the cart, but I can also refresh the page, and I notice that the cart still remains because it's stored in local storage. So we're going to do all of that in SolidJS. Now, our starting point is this repository over here. It's got the React version. It's got the finished version, so you can start with that if you want, but you can also start with the starter kit, which is what we're going to do. And that starter kit is based on Solid. And I use the TypeScript starter here. So I used this part first, and then I installed Tailwind on top of that. And then I installed SolidJS app router on top of that, because this original page has routes on it, and we use React Router DOM on this React page. So let's head on over to the terminal and dig right into it. I'm in that directory now, and I'm going to copy recursively the starter into a new folder called Solid eCommerce. And then I'm going to bring that up in VS Code. And from there, I'm going to do yarn, and then yarn start. And that's how quickly that comes up. Honestly, this is Vite, and it is incredibly fast. So I'll option click on that. And there's our starter page. It's got Tailwind, it's got TypeScript. It's basically got all of the tools that we're going to need. So let's go take a look over at our React code and how that's structured, just to get kind of a familiarity with it. So it uses no state manager. It just uses all of the basic React hooks, use effect, use state, use callback. The first thing it does is bring in a custom hook called use local storage. It's basically just use state, but on local storage that manages the cart. This is the app component, so it's basically at the top of the tree. It then creates some callbacks for adding to cart, clearing the cart. Then there's a use effect, which goes on startup. So that's because it has an empty dependency array that hits this fake API store products page, basically just a nice little fake store API. And then here's some logic for managing the search bar, in that when you are on a detail page like this, if you start typing, then we're going to see that there's a change to that search field and then route you back to the home page so that we can display that. That's handled by this system here with this use callback. It's got this nice dependency array in there. And then finally, we got our basic structure with the header, the switches for the router, for the home page, and then for the product details. So pretty simple stuff if you're familiar with doing create React app and then React router. So the first thing we want to do is bring across that header. So I'm going to go and copy all of the header and then go over into our source folder here, create a new directory called components and a new file called header.tsx. And then paste that in. And the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to get this from SolidJS. And we need a type called component. And we can replace this React function component with just components. The only types of components we have in Solid are function components. Again, we're looking at this as a replacement for the React that we have today, completely, as if we started from scratch. So let's just try and fix up all of the red squigglies as we go. The first one is this use memo. So in SolidJS, the version of that is create memo. Basically does exactly the same thing. So we're going to do a create memo there. It's not quite right yet, but one of the cool things is it doesn't require a dependency array, and I'll get to that in a second, why that's the case. But now continuing on, another big change is class name. So we're just going to change all of the class name to class. Pretty easy, right? Now I've got this link here, and we don't actually have React Router DOM, so let's bring in that Solid App Router. That does have a link, which is great. But in this case, the to is just href, like that. Now we've got these issues with product. Okay, so we do need to get the product definition. Let's go over here to products.ts. I'll just copy and paste that into the source folder. Call it product.ts. Paste that in there. So that gives us our interface for what we get back from the API. Pretty easy. Okay, so continuing on. This is an interesting one. OnChange is a synthetic event in React, and it doesn't exist in Solid. What you do get are the raw events because it's a much smaller framework. And so in this case, that would be on key up. And you don't get a target, you get a current target. All right, pretty cool. Now, this is an interesting one. So when it comes to Solid, you don't use the .map system to go and iterate through something. You use a new declaration called for. So I'm going to drop this in here. And then you give it whatever you're going to iterate over. So in this case, it's each. And we will be iterating over the cart. It's not quite right yet, but let's go and keep on going to this. So I'll drop this in here. So the content of the for is a function that when called will get each item in the cart in this example, and then return out the elements that are required to render that. So let's do the key. It actually is going to handle that for us in this case. And this is actually starting to look pretty good. And then the last one in here is that total. And okay, so here's where you need to start thinking about this as Solid. So the way that Solid does data management and binding is pretty different. And let's go over to app and get that started so that we can see how that's all going to fit together. So over here in app, we've got our component. We're going to be bringing in that header. So let's do that. Just like so. And we are going to be instantiating that right at the top here. Now there's a bunch of properties that it doesn't have, so we need to go and create new state for that. So we need a cart and we need a search string. So let's start with the search string since it's a little easier. So in SolidJS, the use state is called create signal. So we'll start off with search. And we'll just start off with an empty string like that. And we can pass that on to header, as well as on set search, which will get a string, and then do a set search on that string. Okay, now notice that this is getting a red curly, and why is that? Well, if I do Command K, Command I on this, we can see that this is an accessor. If I go to the type definition, an accessor is a function that returns that type. So in this case, search isn't the atomic type of a string. It's a function that returns a string. And when you call that function, you're essentially subscribing to it. And that's how SolidJS does reactive state management. When you invoke one of these signals, you get a subscription to it. And then when that value changes, you automatically get updated. So let's go take a look over at our header and see how we need to change this. This is going to turn into a function that returns a string, and cart is going to turn into a function that returns an array of products. So let's go take a look now at this create memo. And what we really have is cart like reduce like that. So that actually becomes a lot cleaner. And here's the really cool part. So when cart changes, total changes dynamically automatically. And that's very important to understand because this function header is only going to get ever executed once. Okay, so let's go down and see how we're going to use total. So in this case, total isn't a value, it's a function. So just like a signal with a cart, total is a function. And by invoking it, you subscribe to it. Pretty cool stuff. Okay, so let's go down and continue search. In this case, again, is going to be an invocation like that. Cart, want to be an invocation like that. And we're looking pretty good. Of course, we're not passing in cart or clear cart yet. So let's go do that. I'm just going to go and copy and paste that. Create cart. Set cart. Start with an empty array. And you need to define that it's a product. So we need to import product. And we'll define that that is an array of products, just like we would with useState. Okay, let's go and add cart. And then on clear cart. Thank you, GitHub. Nicely done. Okay, so in this case, we're just going to set cart to an empty array. And let's see how we go. All right, it's blowing up. Let's see why it's blowing up. If I go over here in the console, we can see that our app is not wrapped in a router. So let's go fix that. Go back into app. Let's go over into index.tsx. And then we'll bring in router from the SolidJS app router and just wrap the app in it. Hey, look at that. Looking pretty good. Looking good. Great. And let's see if that actually works. So we'll go over here to app.tsx and we'll just put that search string in here in a div. And again, it's not an atomic value, it's a function. So we need to then call that like that. Looking pretty good. You can kind of see it in the corner there. Looks awesome. So the next thing we need to do is bring in that home page. So let's go back over here, bring in home page, and I'll go and create a new component, homepage.tsx. Again, we're going to bring in component from SolidJS. And we're going to bring in the link from that solid app router. Cool, just like that. Okay, this React function component becomes a component. And use memo, we don't have that anymore. We have create memo. Now, where use memo in React was essentially optional, in SolidJS, it is absolutely not optional. Each component really only ever gets executed once, and we'll see that in a little bit. But basically, if you got some code in here, don't anticipate that that's going to get run over and over and over again like we would in React. If you want to have a derived value, you have to use something like create memo. So let's get rid of that dependency array. We don't use those because when you invoke that function, like in this case, the function that's going to return products, then you're automatically subscribed to that. So this create memo knows that by invoking this product function, we are subscribing to products. And whenever products changes, then this memo needs to change. This filter memo needs to change. You also get the search string. So let's put that in there. And we can see that search also needs to become a function invocation, just like that. Now let's go through and change out all our class names. And we'll change out the to an href on link. And there's no key anymore. Okay, so this is obviously in a map, which it is. So let's go and do a for here. And we'll do each and give it filtered products, which again is a function. So we need to invoke that. And then we can pretty much take this section in here and just copy it in there. So let's go get rid of that. Paste that in. Let's take a look. So that actually worked. Yeah, that's got a product. Seems to be pretty good. Okay. So let's go back over to end to app and start integrating this. So the first thing we need to do is bring in the router. So I'm going to go and copy and paste in this and bring in routes and route. And we'll start off a section in here with routes. And then within that, oh, that's pretty good. All right. And we don't want header. We want homepage, just like that. And in this case, with actually element. And we'll do homepage. And what do we need on that? We need on add to cart, we need products and search. So we have search, that's pretty easy. And we have on add to cart, that should be pretty easy. Put that on the next line. And then set the cart to the existing cart with the new product on there. Okay, great. Okay, but now we need the list of products. And so we're going to use something different for that. We're going to use a resource. So I'm going to bring in create resource. And create resource is effectively what you get if use state and use effect had a baby API. Okay, so let's use this. And we're going to go and create products as a create resource. Yep, with a product as an array. That's going to be the type of it. And that's going to be a function. And let's go get the content of that. So that's a fetch to that fake store API. And we'll just drop that in there. Very cool. Okay, so what this is basically saying is create resource is looking for a promise that is fulfilled by fetch. We are then going to do that fetch, and then we're going to take the result of that and pick out the JSON from that. And that's going to be what's going to go into products. So let's go and put that into our app. Like so. Oh, looking pretty good. Okay, let's give it a try. I'm gonna hit refresh and I get a blow up. Let's see what's happening. Okay, so let's go over to console. And we can see that we're trying to run a filter on undefined. So what's happening here? Well, in this case, create resource is starting as undefined. And then once this fetch is completed, then we've got an array. So what I need to do is give it an initial value, which is just a simple empty array. So I do that by adding on an optional object, give it initial value as an array, and away we go. Hit refresh again, and looking really, really good. Okay, let's give it a try. Let's add to cart. Interesting. Okay, so it zips on over there. That's okay. Let's see why that is. Well, if we go over to homepage and scroll down, we have an event stop propagation in there. If we do event prevent default, does that help? Let's save. All right, looking pretty good. All right, cool. So the cart is updating, but we're not actually getting any value changes. So let's go and see why that's the case. So we'll go back over to header. And we can see that I'm invoking cart a little wrong here. I'm expecting, again, that kind of primitive type. And what I want is that array. So I'm going to do cart like that. That's cool. And the same sort of thing over here. And then the same thing down here. Cart length, just like that. All right, let's add a cart. Perfect. Awesome. So that reactivity is good to go. Awesome. So before we go on, let's go take a look back at app.tsx and see if we can do this a little bit better. So we're doing a lot of prop drilling here. We're prop drilling into header, we're prop drilling into homepage, and if we continued on like this, we'd probably be prop drilling into the product detail page as well and sending up products. Can we do better? Well, we're used to going and defining state inside the component, but you notice that create signal here isn't called use signal, it's called create signal, which is different. And as it turns out, that's a genuinely functional difference because you can invoke create signal from anywhere. It's really cool. So I'm going to go and take this and copy it and then create a new file called store.ts right at the top level here. And you can obviously put this anywhere you want it, but I'm going to go bring in all of that, just like that. And then I can just start exporting out of here. All this stuff. And then I need to bring in product, just like that. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Okay. So what I can do now is I can go over to my app And I can actually get rid of this. And I can get rid of a lot of this and a lot of this. All right. And I know this is all erroring out right now, but we'll fix that. So let's go over to our header first and fix that. So I'm going to be getting a lot of this from that store. So let's go and import cart and search from the store. So let's go and clear out this and then clear out all the properties. Just like so. And we don't need product anymore. That's nice. Okay, but we are missing on add to cart and also on set search. So let's go and create those in our store. Okay, that works. And then on clear cart is just set the cart to nothing. And on set search, yep, that looks pretty good. Let's export that as a const. Nice. Okay, great. So let's go back over here and do on clear cart and on set search from the store. Okay, that looks pretty good. Not complaining. And let's jump over here into homepage, do something similar. So we're just going to get rid of all of this and get rid of all the props. From store, we will go get the products and on add to cart, I think, and probably also search, right? Awesome. And it's that easy to transition from local component state to global state. Whoa. So if you've got state that you think it needs to be global, you just go and create that. You can manage context in this. That works just fine too. But if you just need to have global state, you don't need to go and create context just to pass that around. It's all just built right in and it's all reactive, which is just so cool. Okay, so now that we've done that, let's go over and bring in that product detail page. We'll create a new one called product detail. Paste that in. Again, I'll make that SolidJS. And we get use params from the solid app router. Great. Okay, that's actually right. And we're going to get products from the store and on add to cart from the store. So let's change this React function component to a component. Get rid of our inputs like that. Very cool. Now we have a use memo here. So let's go and do create memo again. And this one is just finding the product. So we'll do create memo and then we'll do products again as a function invocation. And once again, we do not need the dependency array because we don't need to manually track that. Just by calling products, we will automatically be subscribed to products. So if it changes, then we change automatically. Love it. All right, so if we have a product, and let's just change all these. Like so, very cool. And we also got to change all our class names. All right. That looks really good. And on add to cart is the current product. Great. Awesome. Okay, let's try this out. So let's go back over here to our app and we'll add in a new route. And from there, we need our product detail page. Oh, look, we no longer need product detail or any of these. Boy, the code's cleaning up fast. I love it. Okay, product detail. And now if I click on this, oh my God, that is so cool. All right, here we go, add to cart, brilliant. And if I just click around inside of this, I still get the state, which is great. But if I refresh, then it's all gone. So let's see how we can hold that cart in local storage like we did over in React. So I'm going to go close out a bunch of these windows and then going back into store. And I'm going to use a different state management mechanism, again, built right into SolidJS, and that's called create mutable. So create mutable allows you to create a more complex shared structure that works a lot like kind of a Valtio or a MobX. So I'm going to go and create one called cart, and then do create mutable, and you give it an object. So in this case, it's just a list of products, and we'll start off with that as a product. And we'll say, oh, okay, so we need a total, and we'll make that a getter. And that's just going to return the, that's actually really good. This product's produced, total product. Yeah, that's actually perfect. Okay, thank you again, GitHub Copilot. So that's going to give us the total in price of all the products. So let's go and add to cart. It'll take a product, and then this .products.push product. Love it. Okay, great. And then clear cart. And that's just going to set that product array to empty, which is great. Okay, and then we can get rid of the cart. Okay, let's go see how we're going to go and fix that over in the header. So we don't have on clear cart anymore, but we do have cart. And we don't need this memo, so let's get rid of that. Get rid of that create memo up there. Cool. And now we got cart.products.length. Now we replace this with cart.products. All right, from here, we can just make a function that does cart.clearCart. And then in here, oh, look at that. We have already our cart total. That's awesome. Cool. Are there any other issues we have in here? Oh, we got, again, a cart length. So let's do that. Cart.products.length. Any other issues? Looking good. Great. Okay, moving on. Homepage. So add to cart isn't there anymore, so we'll replace that with cart. And then jump down here and do cart.add to cart. Easy peasy. And let's go see same sort of thing. Probably same sort of thing here. Yep. So replace that with cart. Awesome. All right, let's add a few things to the cart. Looking good. But if we refresh, we still have the same problem. We're not doing anything with local storage yet. So let's go fix that. And we'll go back over to the store. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is get the local storage for cart. And if we don't find that, then we need to return an empty array as a string because we're going to pass that into json.parse. Because local storage is a string, it's not an object. And then to set it, we're going to do window.localstorage.setItem. And then give it the cart. And that actually looks really good. Thank you again, GitHub Copilot. And let's save that out and see how we go. So let's refresh. Very, very cool. Okay, so let's jump over here, add to cart. Looking really good. Refresh it again. And done. So we've seen a lot about how SolidJS does reactive state management, but what's this other thing about the VDOM? So let's go and do something really cool. Let's go in app, let's do a console log. And we'll do app and then index ++. And we'll make index up here. And we'll just do the same sort of thing for the header as an example. Call that header. Okay, so let's go and bring up our console and see how that worked. So we can see that app got run once and header got run once. Now if I go and add to cart, now everything's changing, but we're not getting any reruns of those functions. And that's a really critical difference. What's happening here is this function gets run exactly once when it's instantiated. And then from there, it returns effectively a template, a dynamic template. And when parts of that template change, for in this case, for example, the car products, then we automatically go and update the template, but we don't rerun that function. And that's why you get the dramatic efficiency boost when it comes to SolidJS versus React.
Let's punch it.
So let's go take a look at the React code and do the same thing and see what happens in that case. So over here in our app.tsx, we'll go and create an index. And then go and console log it. And we'll do the same thing over in the header. And we'll console log it out of there as well. Now let's take a look at our React app and bring up the inspector and the console. And every time we're adding something to this, we're getting complete re-renders of basically the entire stack from the app on down. And what's happening is that those functions are creating a set of nested React elements, and that's being assessed against the VDOM, and then the updates are being made. And the result is, in comparison to SolidJS, a lot slower. In fact, how much slower? Well, let's go over to the SolidJS documentation and click on the performance item. And in there, you've got vanilla.js at the bottom end. Obviously, that's going to be the fastest thing if you hand wrote vanilla.js. There's a few interesting things in between. Mikado, which is an entirely different system. There's WASM, and then there's Solid. And so Solid is just slightly worse than coding yourself in vanilla.js. And that's the really cool part here. As a React programmer, see how little difference there is basically in how you code between SolidJS and React. But for that, you get this tremendous, tremendous performance boost and also a great reactive data management system built right into it. Okay, so one more thing on the performance side. Let me bring up the terminal here, and I'm going to do a build on the React side, and then do the same thing over in SolidJS land. And we can see how big the bundle sizes compare. So, okay, it's done here. Let's open the build directory on this guy. So this is the React version. And we can see that the React is about 163K for the framework itself, and 4K, 10K, 12K on top of that. So 175K for the entire bundle for this little e-commerce app. Now let's go take a look over at our Solid app and see how that compares. Let's create a dist directory, and we'll jump into that. And in there, let's see, JS. Oh yeah, 6K. And then 22K for the vendor library. So 28K gets you SolidJS and an entire e-commerce application. So really, really cool stuff. Okay, so I promised at the beginning of this video explaining why I think that React is actually doing something that it was never really intended to in the first place. And that's a bit of a history lesson. So we kind of started all this with jQuery back in the day. And that was a great starting point, but when the complexity of apps got too large, we decided we needed a model view controller type paradigm to go with. And so to do that, we created systems like Backbone and Thorax to manage the view state as held separate from the state, because the state management was going to be complex, and so was the view system. And we didn't want to get our peanut butter and our chocolate together like that. So everybody thought that was cool, except for the fact that the view system was based on templates and wasn't encouraging component style reuse within the system. So at that point, we got two different alternatives. You got Angular, which basically said, hey, throw out everything, but you get great state management and you also get a cool component system. And also React, which said, hey, keep your state management system, but we'll manage all of the view state for you. And the only reason why React had any state management system at all was because each component could be a smart component, say, for example, a hierarchical tree, and you want to be able to manage what the open and closed items were in that hierarchical tree. And that was the only reason why you'd have any state in it at all, was to manage that kind of view state. And all of the actual application state was going to be managed by what you'd previously done with Backbone. And then we said, well, that really doesn't work all that well with React. So Facebook came up with the Flux paradigm, which was popularized by Redux, and that became sort of the standard go-to from then going forward. But you always had these two systems. You always had to pair React with essentially a state management system because React was never meant to be the state manager. And then we got hooks, and hooks were close enough to being a state management system where we kind of looked over the fundamental flaws. But again, getting back to my original point, it's always important as an engineer to say, knowing what we know today, can we be doing better? And the fact of the matter is, React was never meant to be a fully fleshed out state management system. And so that's what Solid is trying to address. It's trying to both give you a performance benefit in terms of losing the VDOM, but also give you a real world production ready state management system built right into the framework. And addressing what the original commenter said, which was a fundamental flaw in their React system. So a little bit of a history lesson there, but I hope you understand and conceptualize now why SolidJS not only exists, but honestly needs to exist if the React ecosystem is to evolve at this point. Well, I'm sure you have some questions for me about this really cool new framework. If you do, please put those in the comment section down below. YouTube loves your comments, and I love answering your comments as well. And of course, feel free to like this video if you liked it and hit that subscribe button if you want to see more videos just like it.